All right, so we're here, and in today's episode of Warm Up, we take a trip over across human and social biology. We're looking at the solution for question 3 of the 2024 exam paper done in January. And so we're getting right into it. Remember to subscribe, follow us, even comment if you want us to work any particular question in the science area. So this says define the term photosynthesis. And one of the things you are expected to know is the definition. If you're not familiar, photo means light, synthesis means to create. And so this is the process by which green plants make their own food. So, we're going to step it up a little bit. The question is worth 2 marks. Green plants are basically what we refer to as autotrophs. So we're using this opportunity to discuss further some information that would have been critical for you, the student. So they're autotrophs, and it simply means that they're capable of making their own food. Remember, plants are the ones that are usually at the start of the food chain because they're the only ones that can convert inorganic substances. So if we want to dive in a little bit more in terms of the definition, what they do is to take inorganic substances, and those two inorganic substances are carbon dioxide and water, right? And combine it with the use of sunlight, chlorophyll, which traps the sunlight. Those are the conditions for the reaction to occur, and produce what we call their food, which is known as glucose. So inorganic substances are converted to actually to complex organic substances. And so the organic substance in question is the glucose. So while we say it's a process by which green plants make their own food, you do remember that it's really in detail, and you can even go further. If you're doing CAPE, you would want to go further in terms of the process of photosynthesis. It's the use of inorganic substances, and they basically convert those inorganic substances to organic substances. All right, so part 2 says write the chemical equation for photosynthesis. For photosynthesis, we want to use this equation right here. We said that photosynthesis also is, not like the opposite of respiration. And so we have C6 O2, which is the carbon dioxide, and this is the gas. We have water, and just to talk a little bit about the process, we know what you have is the leaves that have the stomatal pores on their underside, and they will basically allow for carbon dioxide to enter into the leaf, and water is taken up from the roots or the soil via the roots. And basically what will happen, osmosis allows for the water moving from the soil into the root. We have adhesion and cohesion and transpiration pull that allows for the water to get to the leaves. And then basically we would have had the light and the chlorophyll. Chlorophyll produced by the chloroplast, and based on that, just a little, explanation, the light would have basically split the water molecules, and then we would have gotten the hydrogen ions, and basically that will allow for enzymes and other processes to convert this inorganic compound, which is a carbon dioxide, into glucose. So C6H12O6 is the glucose. And along with that, we do have a situation where the plant will give out oxygen, and that this also leaves the stomatal pore of the plants, and we as humans, we utilize oxygen. Now, one of the misconceptions, and I actually have the formula for respiration here just to indicate, because students sometimes think that plants don't require oxygen. And yes, all living things, once you're going to be respiring aerobically, you're going to require oxygen for that process. So that food that the plant would have made via photosynthesis, the glucose, in order for the cells of the plant to utilize it, it would need oxygen. So plants do utilize oxygen, and they do give out carbon dioxide, and we have water. We know that respiration, I know the question really speaks about photosynthesis, but we're doing our little warm up and we want persons to be fully prepared. And so respiration is really a combustion reaction. And you can see the link between the bio and the chemistry come in here, because it's an organic compound. We need oxygen, and we know for a combustion reaction we'll get carbon dioxide and water. Please remember to balance your chemical equations when providing. You would have had the light and you'd have had the chlorophyll. Right? The next question speaks to the cell, or identify the site in the cell. We know that cells of a plant or any other organism have what we call organelles. And just to, kind of explain again, it makes it easier to have specified organelles that will carry out specific functions. Like, for example, in our human sense, we would have created governments, and each government probably would be divided into ministry, and the ministries would carry out certain function, because it's really complicated to take on all the roles. And so in the cell, we have organelles that carry out specific function. Now, the organelle that is responsible, or where photosynthesis will be taking place, is called the chloroplast. Now, the chloroplast is found in the leaf. You have modifications in some plants where some of the stems will basically take on the role of photosynthesis. But in terms of the leaf, you have areas such as the palisade mesophyll and the spongy mesophyll. Palisade mesophyll is usually the area where you have a larger number of these chloroplasts, and they're usually, when you talk about the upper epidermis and the cuticle, that's where they're located to trap as much of the sunlight as possible. And so that would have been utilized in the process of photosynthesis. And it says, name the pigment necessary. And we know the pigment would have been chlorophyll. And chlorophyll is what is used to trap the sunlight. Remember, the sunlight is what is actually used to split the water molecule, providing that hydrogen ion that will basically drive the production of the glucose. So that is very important right there. So as we indicated, the chloroplast is the site. We have the palisade mesophyll and the spongy mesophyll. Those are the two areas where they would be concentrating a lot of the chloroplast. In the leaf, you have the green pigment, chlorophyll, that is responsible for trapping the sunlight so that the plant can use that to split the water molecule. All right, so part B says, due to forest fires in the Amazon, many species of plants are being depleted. outline two ways in which a reduction in the plant population could have a negative effect on human beings. And so we want to talk a little bit about, when we are as campers, and when you go into the forest, one of the things the rangers and those personnel will try to ensure that persons use the space properly. Sometimes it's just because of persons who are delinquent in leaving fires, or they smoke and throw the cigarette butt in the area, and it cause a big blaze. So two ways in which a reduction in the plant population could have a negative impact on human beings. And we want to talk about the role of plants. When some scientists refer to the Amazon or rainforest to be the lungs of the earth, remember we just spoke about photosynthesis, and one of the products of photosynthesis is oxygen. And so, with a reduction in the plant population, the amount of oxygen being produced, or the volume of oxygen, will basically decrease. So, oxygen is one of the important factors that would be needed. So, with fewer trees, then we have a decrease in oxygen. And no, humans are needing oxygen. And so trees also have a cooling effect. They basically allow for rainfall, precipitation to occur with the assistance of transpiration. They help with the cooling of an area. And so when you have less trees, you're going to may have an increase in the temperature. So trees are very important. Humans feed on organisms, and some of the organisms basically utilize the trees as habitats. And so, with their reduction, you are going to have species that are going to be affected by not having a home to survive. The roots of plants also aid in reducing soil erosion. So you know that the roots, one of the role of them is to anchor the plant. And by anchoring the plant, they help to hold the soil together. And so with that, it reduces soil erosion. And so nutrients and those other minerals within the soil can be held in position so humans can make use of that nutrients. And so these are some of the importance. When you look at the watershed helps in terms of the purification of water. So the trees also help to basically filter out poisonous chemicals and ensure that the water in the waterways are basically clean. And so that's another important aspect. We as humans utilize trees for getting timber wood to make houses, furnitures, and other items. And so with a reduction in trees, we may not have the capability to get those items. We also use the wood as a source of energy, heat. Some persons still basically burn the tree, even though it's not something that is, considered to be ideal. Some persons still get coal from the trees that will basically be utilized as a means of getting heat to cook and do other things that require fire for us. And so that is also another importance of the trees in the environment to human beings, right? And most definitely, we know that while they are actually giving out oxygen, their role is to also remove carbon dioxide. And so, with us doing a lot of activities with the increase in technology and the use of fossil fuels, we're basically putting more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And so, if we're not careful, once you have less trees, then you're going to have less plants that will be capable of reducing the carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere. So you create that unbalance. Usually carbon is in the air, but with us doing different activities, we increase the amount. And so if we have fewer trees, then we have fewer plants that are capable of converting this carbon dioxide in such a way they use it to make their own food. And so these are some of the importance. And so quickly, we want to say the trees provide oxygen. The trees helps to bind the soil together, thus reducing soil erosion. The trees act as a habitat, and so it increases biodiversity of the range of organisms. Um, we use the trees to obtain timber to make furniture. So trees basically assist us as humans to obtain shelter. It reduces the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And we know there are implications related to this, where we have too much carbon dioxide, it will create problems since carbon dioxide is one of our greenhouse gases. It helps with rainfall, precipitation. It keeps the area cool, and we basically will allow for the filtering of water, especially when they're a part of a watershed. So these are, any two of these outlined could be basically talking about the negative impact. So you would be, what you would do is to state that you're getting less oxygen, you would have had an increase in soil erosion, you have less biodiversity, we have limited amount of timber, which will be used to get furniture and houses. We basically would have more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, creating global warming. We would have reduction in rainfall, which is needed to sustain plants and other us as humans. It keeps, would have areas being increase in temperature. So the areas for humans would have been too increase in temperature, gets too hot. We'd have to find ways to cool down, and of course the water supply may be not as filtered as it would have once been. All right, part C made mention, explain how one named human activity may result in the accumulation of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And so humans, one of the major things that we do is the burning of fossil fuels. And so over a period of time, the remains, the organic matter, it will break down, and millions of years, it will basically become the fossil fuel. Now, when we take that or harvest that or gather that fossil fuel for our purposes, factories, we use it in our cars, we use it to obtain energy, we're basically allowing for carbon dioxide to get back into the atmosphere. So that's one way. Another way that we basically do the increase in carbon dioxide through agriculture. So agriculture, we have a technique of clearing the land known as slash and burn, where farmers will basically use the method of fires to clear the land. It's much faster, but by burning the trees, again, we're destroying the plants that would have been assisting us to get rid of some of this carbon dioxide. And while burning, one of the things that if you looked on the combustion, we would have seen that carbon dioxide is one of the byproducts. So once we're burning, we're going to be adding carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So again, the named activity, the burning of fossil fuels. We know again we use this to obtain energy, electricity. We do it in our cars, but at the same time, it will increase the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The practice of slash and burn in agriculture, is a popular method or fast method of clearing the land, but by burning, we are releasing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Part 2 says, suggests 3 effects of global warming on planet Earth. Now, we want to talk a little bit about what exactly is global warming. It's really the increase in the temperature, the atmosphere of the Earth, right? And it's caused by what we call greenhouse gases. The one of the two main greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide is one, methane is another greenhouse gas. And so we just mentioned that through the burning of fossil fuels, through the process or activity of slash and burn by farmers, we add carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But naturally, carbon dioxide will be cycled from the soil to the air in organisms, but when you have the cycle having an imbalance in terms of the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it will create some problems. So what you find is that carbon, some of the light energy coming from the sun, when it reaches on the earth, it will basically be reflected back into space. And this will allow for the earth to maintain its temperature, right? But if you have an accumulation of these greenhouse gases, methane and carbon dioxide, there's going to be a prevention of these rays that would have been reflected back into space to remain in our atmosphere. And once they remain, it's going to create a situation where the temperature is going to be rising. Now it says suggest 3 effects of global warming. Once you have the temperature rising, it can basically affect the sea. Now, in terms of the sea temperature also rising. So marine life, your coral reef, it causes one of the concept of coral bleaching. So the increased temperature will basically affect our coral, causing them to have a bleaching effect. And you know, corals help with the wave action, and it will reduce wave erosion of our coastline. The next thing is the increased temperature again. Looking back at the ice caps, it will cause the ice caps to start to melt, and we'll have an increase in the level, the sea level. So countries like our country, Jamaica, you know, Cayman Islands, they may become non-existent because of the increase or the rise in the temperature. Due to the heat, when you think about the cold and the hot air, that's how hurricanes are actually, you know, formed, storms. And so with global warming, you're now going to have an increase in the more frequent hurricanes, and the soil itself, after a shower of rain, will basically now dry out much faster, right? And so those are some of the effects that global warming will have. With all of that, it will reduce biodiversity in the sense that you have animals that are not capable of migrating, along with the fact that some plants will basically die off with the increased temperature. They're not used to this climate condition. They're not able to evolve. They're not able to adjust to the new temperature increase. So as we said, with the effect of global warming, we see where we have an increase in the temperature of the sea, and this increased temperature causes the destruction of coral reefs. It causes coral bleaching. The increased sea levels also affects low-lying areas. Countries that are very plain, flat, may be in trouble with the rising sea levels. We may have persons have to migrate. Animals and other organisms will have to find higher ground. more frequent hurricanes and storms. And this will have implication, the destruction, the monetary thing behind the after effect of a hurricane, the destruction of plants and animals, the longer drought conditions, and this will seriously affect how agriculture will basically play out in terms of getting irrigation systems, spending more, trying our best to not only for agriculture but for human beings and other animals. We would have to have a plan to store the water, and that may take some level of resources. There is a reduction in biodiversity. Plants that are not able to, well, plants can't move, and so animals that are not able to relocate may become extinct, and that itself would reduce the population of different species. So these are some of the effects of global warming. I know the question didn't mention, some of the ways we can reduce, energy saving, carpooling. These are some of the ways that we can basically use alternative energy sources, solar, hydro, instead of burning fossil fuels would have been a good way of reducing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So again, it's a warm up. We want persons to get ready for their 2024 May-June H.S.B. And so we have just dealt with question 3 that was from the paper in January 2024. Thank you.